Welcome everyone to this rainy afternoon here in Los Angeles. Welcome to our UCLA Latin American Institute K through 12 series. This series we have named it Rhythms in Migration, an ongoing presence of African influences in Latin American music. We're going to be having several talks throughout the remaining of the school year. And today we are really excited for this second session that is going to be about Fandango. And we're really excited. So this series is going to be culminating in June with an in-person 3-day workshop on campus, June 16, 17, and 18. So if you're a teacher and you're interested in attending, please reserve those dates. The registration for that workshop will be opening in the next weeks. And bienvenidos a todos. Gracias por estar aquí con nosotros en este día lluvioso aquí en Los Ángeles. Hoy empezamos con nuestra segunda sesión de esta serie de la influencia de la música africana aquí en Latinoamérica, y hoy estamos muy contentos con esta presentación de un compañero que apoya mucho a nuestro programa de maestros, y estamos muy contentos de que nos apoyen. Cada vez que le hablamos siempre está disponible para compartir todo su conocimiento, y pues gracias. Gracias también al director del Instituto de LAI, Rubén Hernández León, que está aquí con nosotros. Rubén.
Hi, Verónica. Hola, Verónica. Hola, César. Hola, Ari, que está en los controles. Thank you all for participating in this event. As Verónica was saying, this is part of a year-long series on the African influences, or the African influence in Latin American music, in the different genres of Latin American music. Last Saturday, we just had a very nice workshop on Brazilian choro, and we have many things planned for the rest of this year, including a workshop in June. And as Veronica mentioned, this is part of our extension program. We work closely creating workshops and seminars for teachers, K through 12 teachers here in Los Angeles and Southern California. And today it's my great pleasure to welcome back an old friend, I guess at this point, César Castro, who's a musician. He's a teacher himself. He is an artist, band leader of Los Cambalache. He's also a luthier, an instrument maker. He does many things. And he's, as Veronica was saying, he's also a very good friend of the Latin American Institute. He's been teaching, offering courses, seminars, webinars to our extension program. So without further ado, César, welcome back, and the floor is yours.
Ok, gracias. Pues para quitarme el nervio, un poquito de música. Qué bonito es cuando llueve y no me gusta el encierro, más no me gusta el encierro. Qué bonito es cuando llueve. Dan las 8, dan las 9, y espero yo que esos cerros, y espero yo que esos cerros no se deslaven sin nieve. Su camaruca de ley, ahora que vengo a cantarles en su para UCLA. Soy de la tierra caliente que da fruta tropical, donde la gente es formal, alegre y de mucho ambiente. Traigo un saludo patente con mi música, la cruz, radiante como la luz que nos brinda nuestro astro. Señores, soy César Castro, del puerto de Veracruz. Ay, nomás, tantito. Pues muchas gracias. Thank you. This is going to be in English, right? I have to switch to my second language now. Oh my God, I never thought I was gonna say that, and ended up after 20 years having to admit the reality. Well, in my verses, I was trying to improvise about the rain, about being indoors. I don't like it. I am an outdoor person, pretty active. Also, I am from the city and port of Veracruz, Mexico. Right there, still Gulf of Mexico for us. If you're switching, feel free. It's official, and it's a hot and humid place. It's very loud. People are social. Like by social, I mean they love to interact with people that you don't know. We are loud too when we speak, when we talk, and pretty much a Caribbean culture. Caribbean culture being in the Gulf of Mexico is kind of strange, but eventually through the culture you find out, and you find out more stuff than you were taught at school. Unfortunately, when I was growing up there as a kid in the 80s, ooh, uh, I knew that I was Mexican, that I was a mix of Spanish, indigenous, well, European, no, Spanish, indigenous, but never African. And they made you believe that you were one of that combination, that combination that was pretty much everybody. A little bit more, a little bit less. But then later in the 90s, we start finding out about our third root. That's how they were calling it. And they start promoting our Afro descendants heritage. And that was a little hard to understand and to feel on you, because you have a concept of Afro-descendant people, and still I was kind of young, and there were people denying that the Son Jarocho, the practice of the music, was also didn't have that it didn't have an African root, and the discussion begins. But paying attention to certain elements in the culture, you find out that yes, of course, we do have a lot of African roots, but those roots came back from the transatlantic trade, and the city of Veracruz, the port, was a very the most important place of commerce back then. And here I'm showing you a little bit of how the city grew, how it had to get fortified in order to defend from the attacks from the pirates. And that island that you see, I don't know if you see my cursor, but that one still exists, and it has El Fuerte de San Juan de Ulúa. It was a place to stop before coming to the port. It became also a calabozo, like a jail, in another time. Now it's a museum. So a lot of activity was happening here, and that's how our roots got connected. Because slavery, then we get African population in this continent. The Europeans are the ones who did it, and then indigenous living there had to share. I'm gonna say it that way for now. So yes, after many centuries, the city just grew up as a modern city, a lot of concrete. The port is now commercial, is not anymore. Sorry, it's being. It was always commercial, but it was also for transport, for people, and and now it's only commercial. So you'll see the trains, the railroads here, and then the port just being a small version of San Pedro here in California, in Los Angeles. And that city hosted so many cultures, people from so many places on of the world, that some cultural aspects, manifestations stayed and other ones left. Other ones just left with the people who visit Veracruz. And just to name a few, I'm gonna go back to the other one. Just to name a few, for example, at some point Brazilian came to Veracruz, and now we have a batucada. So in Carnaval, and also in the soccer games, we have batucadas and some papakis, which are small parades. We also, you'll see, if you go to Veracruz, you'll see some of the Brazilian batucada heritage that someone who came, shared the music, people liked it, boom, picked up. Why? Now you can guess why it picked up in Veracruz. Also, Cubans, the Cuban migration, for more than a century, we've been, well, actually, since the very beginning of the city, because in Cuba was another place of where they were selling pretty much human trafficking, the legal back then. So between Veracruz and Cuba, we had a relationship, and we still have it. So the music, the Cuban music, son cubano, we also have it in Veracruz. But something that developed in the region, and here I'm gonna move from the city to the whole region, ignoring the states. The states came later. You see here 3 states, but a specific region, and that's the Sotavento region. Uh, and we identify culturally, and one of the elements that identifies us is the Son Jarocho, not the music that you just heard, but with everything, not just the little guitar and singing. You'll see later on a little bit more about the culture. So the countryside where the people were working, and the plantations, on the farms, the cow farms, and dealing with bulls, fishing, where all the commercial activities were happening. That's where the the deepest cultural exchange was happening, and ended up on something that sounds universal for Latin American cultures somehow. For example, with Venezuela and Colombia from the Llanos, this music might sound a little bit like a. Also, it might sound a little bit like the music from made with mejoranas from Panama, and it can also sound at some point like Cuban music, even though we don't have the drums. It could You can relate to the Cuban music. So yes, we became another hub that ended up having an identity after all this mix that is hard to pull out. It's very I sometimes I say, well, it's like making a salsa. It has tomatoes, it has chiles, it has some spices there, but you cannot pull them apart anymore. They're so well blended that you have to eat it as an all, as a as a one thing. So that's what I think of Son Jarocho, because history tells us, and we can track in different ways how this is blended. But just pointing out some of the African, for example, the call response is one of them. The 6/8 pattern, that's a musical term in order to measure the music. So that's another one. And we have some places, some words that have a Bantu origin, West African. And one of them is, for example, Fandango. Here I'm gonna show you some images of Fandango, and they're not necessarily from Veracruz, but as I told you, how in different regions, different places in the continent, you were having this type of celebration. What were the instruments that came? Guitars, harp, violins, and from Europe, and then from Africa, mainly were reproduced over here in this continent, the drums, and and then and the way we practice the music and dance. So Fandango apparently is a word that comes from Bantu origin, West African, meaning el rompimiento del orden con carácter ritual, like breaking the ordinary life, but creating created in a ritual uh, way, uh, with the character of a ritual. And what do we mean by ritual? It's because there's a way we celebrate life and death with fandangos. And fandangos, yes, they look very festive. They have dance, music. In this image, you can see someone making tortillas. And of course, if you're gonna eat, then you're gonna have something to drink too. And and another heritage, old heritage that we carry with this music is the verses, the stories, and that comes from the juglares, no, from the trovadors. And that's pretty much what I did. I was singing something about what's happening here in LA, and probably if you understood, you connected with my verse, and then I said a decima, another type of verse, introducing myself. No, I'm César Castro from Puerto de Veracruz, and that's part of the protocol, if you will. You can see it as a protocol. So, but that's the ritual character that we have in fandangos, and with these three images, you already saw one that looked uh, from people who had more money, and then a little less, and this one outdoors. You know, this one is when a place is hot and humid. Remember Veracruz? Then you'll have the fandangos outdoors, that we're outdoor people. And this image, when I saw it, it looked closer to how the rancho where I went for the first time to a fandango used to be. No electricity, horses right there, and the only difference is that we have a tarima, a wooden floor. We don't dance on the dirt. That would create too much dust and no sound. So in our case, our dance is percussive and is the main percussion, by the way, for this type of music. And again, you see people engaging actively to the musical, the artistic part, but then you see people here just greeting each other, sharing something, drinks, this one playing, and other people talking, like, some people eating, cooking, serving. It's a whole. I don't like to use the word party, but it's pretty much what you get in a house party. You know, you host, and then you have to make feel people comfortable, and that's what we have in Fandango. I'm gonna go back to the other images just to compare really quick. Once again, one of these is from Veracruz. The other two are not, but you can see the difference. Indoors, the clothing, but still the instruments are there. And that's old fandangos. But now let's move on to 2025. And in Veracruz, we had a fandango that was celebrated in Tlacotalpan. And this has less than 2 weeks. And this video shows a little bit on how today this practice is so alive. The faces are young people mostly. Yeah, we just saw someone holding a drink. The eating place is next door, but they're doing the zapateado. That's how we call our dance, zapateado. Now the participation is involved for everybody, not just used to be dominated by males, but now is pretty open, and that's been one of the social changes that Fandango had. I would say that youth is now, I mean, for the last 30 years, I'm gonna say, it's been the the dominant population in Fandangos, and part of it is because it's a lot of energy that you have to put in a fandango. Usually they're all night long. In this case, in Tlacotalpan, if you go, it's a fiesta patronal, so it's for the Virgin of La Candelaria in her honor. So you'll get 3 nights or four sometimes of fandango. So who can, who has endurance for that? Youth. Who doesn't have to go work on Monday? Probably One of them. They don't care. No, but you'll see the dominant instrument as well are the guitars. So it has a lot of string in the sound and a little bit of percussion there. Unfortunately, on this footage, we don't have many instruments, but again, this is the reality of what's happening right now with Fandango. So the reason why they celebrate is a very old reason. The way they do it, like here dancing only women on on the tarima, it's one of the protocols on Fandango in the tradition, and and people still do it. Apparently, during the wars that Veracruz had, the men had to go fight, and there were um, just a few in town, and that's when women just start creating this tradition, ended up with as a tradition of dancing with each other. That's what historians say. We don't know. We don't have a lot of it on writing, so we have missing information as well as the themes. When we play the music, when we sing, we know the themes, but we don't know who composed, who came up with those sones jarochos. Some verses you might know who made it, but usually you know who sang it. It was, oh, this person used to sing these verses. So that we call their versada, su versada. Decimos, mira, esa es la versada de César Castro. And someone might want to learn some of my versada. And since you learn from one and another person, and plus you can create your own, then you ended up with your versada. So this, you saw the harp again, you see it. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for that image. And then since the celebration is too busy, a lot of people go, then you have little fandangos gatherings in different places. And that's El Paseo de la Virgen, no? That's the main day where the Virgen de la Candelaria, the Virgin, goes up with the river. They bring him back, and that's it. That's the ritual. But that's the the religious ritual. If you are part of it, it's because you want to, but that's next to the fandango. Fandango is pretty much the party. Although I just said that I don't like to call it that way, but in the big picture, I mean, the main reason that we have a bunch of fandangos, as you can see here, fiestas patronales, no? La Virgen de la Candelaria, the one that we just saw. And then in different regions, you get San Juan in June, you get Santiago in July, you get San Andres, you get Virgen de la Guadalupe in Diciembre, and different places where there are the main saint, the main virgin. And if the tradition is strong enough, they might host for a lot of people who visit for either. Well, we have El Cristo Negro too in Otatitlan, the Black Christ, and those celebrations bring people from different regions, and they are, ¿cómo se dice? Devotos, no? They are their faith is on these saints, and they pray, they make promises, they ask, they do their religious part, but around it there's a lot of commerce, people selling anything from food to instruments, or no, wear uh, your clothing, selling all kinds of things. Dulces también, dulces like some traditional uh, desserts or candies, should I say. So it becomes a whole, a big, very big, very important reason for people to have also a fandango in the middle of that big picture. Another reason to celebrate with fandangos is our birthdays. Here I just use two images. The elders get celebrated by youth. No? That's a good thing that uh, we we respect, we honor, we recognize the life of some people who have been practicing this for decades, and they share their music, their dance. So Doña Elena in one side from Tlacotalpan, her fandango is super traditional in December. So that's something a good reason, but not just for them. You can also have your own fandango if you decide, but you have to be part of this community. Don't just say, "Oh, I want to have a fandango," and people just go. Of course, they need you need to have a connection with the community. So that's another good reason to do it. But then fandango, no, it's an expression, as I was saying about the verses, about the stories. You can sing about old stories, or you can sing about the new ones, and of course you can be funny, you could be historical, or you can be romantic, or you can be political, you can be critical, or you can be political but uh, in the side of the person in power. So yeah, you choose, and everything had happened. So political reasons. What we have Fandango. One of the pictures there, we are in Chiapas, in one of the Encuentros Zapatistas back in 1996, and we brought music to that event, and we had a fandango at night, and people loved it. The other one is Fandango Fronterizo. So the statement there is it's a, happens half of the tarima is in the U.S. side, and the other half of the tarima is in the Mexican side. We bring them close to the wall, and the political um, message is breaking the walls through music, culture, art. So that's a very strong statement there that used to happen. I think now there's no permits anymore, but a bunch of it happened, like 15, I think. And then the other picture you see down there is Son Jarocho Feminista in Mexico City. Women on March, they they got together and they had their contingent, así se dice, and they went to the march, and they had a fandango. They have fandangos feministas, fandango for women only, space created just for them to interact, have fun, celebrate, go for it. So there's a political statement, right, as well. So how do you learn fandango? How do you learn how to play this music? Of course, if you are from the tradition, probably you grew up with someone next to you playing, and by listening, you end up and watching, you end up uh, learning. And when you get access to the instrument, then you already know. Everything is in your brain. You already saw it. It's it, on you. But happens that became so popular that people want to learn, and also became a way of living. As you heard, that I've been doing this for a while. I also do other stuff that is not related to Son Jarocho, but definitely a lot of what I do is related to Son Jarocho. So I decided to be a professional Son Jarocho musician, and I have to earn some money. So we also do workshops for some money. We do performances for some money. So we have the economic side always next to us, but that's a new, still considered a new thing, and it's a transaction that never hurts because it's not an expensive space to learn on workshops everywhere, pretty much everywhere, and some are donations and voluntary donations, and of course there's a lot of free places where you can learn. And here I have one, I think is in Puebla, the other one is in Santana, California, the other one is in Mexico City, and this one here, I was part of a project, Arts in Correction, and I was teaching how to play jarana also in these spaces. So I can show you other spaces, schools, elementary, middle, um, college. I also teach in Occidental College. I have the I'm the director of the Son Jarocho ensemble there. So there's Son Jarocho. I volunteer in a cultural center called Isai Cafe, and we're always finding ways to pass on this information is not to make money at all. I don't think. I mean, if someone thinks that way, they're in the wrong business. No, the transaction is just to compensate, but what we really have in our core is the passion of sharing the information and having more fandangos, because some people leave and new people come, and that's a good practice to have. So what do we teach when you go to a fandango? Now let's move to the instruments. Mm, the the main instrument, as I mentioned, it was the jarana, the one that I played, and this one comes in different sizes. Here you see a statement of 8-string guitar shaped instrument. That's super simplistic. Actually, you can find jaranas with 10 strings, 8, 9, 7, 5. What we have is 5 sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then different tunings. Right now I'm using the most popular tuning, which if you play ukulele or you know the tuning of ukulele, and then we repeat the other note. This is strumming guitar. So guitars come from North Africa, and this is something that I really want to point out, because sometimes when we say Africa, African root, we think of West African and that period where the slave trade, but also the North Africa, the Arabic area, the Maghreb, all that influenced the Peninsula Iberica, so what's now Spain, and for so many centuries that they ended up having a lot of Arabic elements in their culture, and that's what they also brought. So jaranas are also instruments that come from that culture, and we have in our tuning we call it open tuning. And it has a note that's always there ringing. And that drone note, if you listen to Indian music or other music that comes from that area of the world, you might have a good connection with some of our Son Jarocho music as well. So I love to point that out, because when I teach, sometimes musicians want to get rid of that open note because it causes a dissonance, but I tell them that dissonance is part of the sound of Son Jarocho. So when we talk about harmony, the harmony doesn't have to be the harmony of the perfect chord, perfect, just to say the triad. No, I don't want to get technical, but you got my point there. So jarana comes in different sizes. That's a jarana primera. I have jarana mosquito here. Same technique with my hand. I strum, doing the fans that you see also some of it in flamenco music. So yes, no, the technique comes from there. Also, if you check on how people play the oud or baroque guitar, you'll find some things in common. Oh, I had this for you. Uh-oh, doesn't work. Now a bigger jarana. Amada Marcelina, le vengo yo a avisar que el son en California se ha vuelto popular. Ajá. The person who wrote the verses is here with us. So jarana tercera changes the tone. It gets, woo. Of course, bigger, deeper. Another family of guitars is the requinto. Requinto is right here, 4 or 5 string guitar, guitar shaped instrument that plays the melody of the music. But how we play it is with a plectrum. It's a little piece of horn. You can probably see this one better. So from this piece of from this horn, I get a piece to play the instrument, and we pluck one string at a time, mainly. Okay, it's just a little sample. And here we go back to the Arabic influence, and you might find other plucked instruments, maybe with a feather, maybe with a piece of horn, and also the open strings. It has a lot of open strings. And that sound where I play with more open strings than melodies, for example, a melody would be and then open strings. Those open strings, we call it tangueo. Sounds familiar to you? Tangueo, tango. Uh, 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 so that's another African heritage. No, oh, what's the meaning of tangueo then? Well, definitely it's the root is not in in Europe. So, oh, now I'm gonna move fast forward. I love these instruments. So I can just play one the whole hour. And you see the leona. It says a large 4-string guitar-shaped instrument that makes a low sound like a bass guitar. Uy. And if you pay attention to the melodies, this one is not telling story. This one is not moving up and down. It kind of repeats pretty often, but keeps a groove and with syncopated rhythms. And to me, oof, I mean, this is my favorite. And this one connects so much every time I play with either West African drummers or, for example, with Afro-Colombian drummers, Afro-Cuban, any Afro-descendant culture from in this continent. Oh my God, it connects. I find myself going at some point, one hand, boom, 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 there, it's connecting. So what this one does, and here's where the information, slaves unfortunately, they didn't get to bring their instruments, the ones who play music. They didn't get to bring anything, right? So what they had was up here. So the music ended up uh, being translated from whatever they were playing to these new instruments. You know, the ensembles became their African root. It's blended into these rhythms in either zapateo, no, the dance, or any of the other instruments. Because the jarana, if you notice, is also a very percussive instrument. So well, here, same technique with the plectrum, but now the bass line, so boom, 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 like a tumbadora cubana. So now the percussion. I said the main percussion was tarima. Tarima, raised wooden platform. You saw it in the video. That one in the picture. It's something like this. Very little, personal. And what I like on this one is that it has some plates. So when you dance, you hear the wood and then some of the plates. Plates on instruments. It's also a very African influence taste, no? Very African. You'll see it in drums. Like the djembe, sometimes the djembe has like a feather or a leaf, metallic leaf with rings. Boom. So when they play, because that it has a buzz, a rattling. Speaking of rattling, we have the tambourine. Unfortunately, because of the weather, doesn't have any tension, so boom, it went down to flat. But our technique is very simple. One hand, thumb, and the rest of the fingers, and a rattling that with friction on your thumb, and then you combine. These instruments used to be only for December, no, to let's say to the caroling season, but now you'll hear it everywhere and at any time of the year. Now the quijada is like a güiro. On this one, people say, "Oh, by the way, the tambourine is Arabic, right? That came with the Spaniards." Yeah, no doubt about that one. And then this one, the quijada, people say that it's an African instrument, but here's where I'm still looking for the Afro culture, African culture that still is in Africa and plays this instrument, or some some evidence of an African culture in Africa playing this instrument, because I just find it in Afro descendant cultures in the Americas. So anyway, here we go. The teeth, you scratch them with a piece of wood or sometimes a bone, and then you hit the side, and because it's a fork and you're holding it from the top, it vibrates. All the teeth are loosened. So that's a donkey jaw. And I went through all these instruments, and we have a few more that I can't show you, but you can probably recognize them. The harp that we saw in videos and other images. We have the violin. This instrument is in the Sotavento region, remember? In Veracruz, Oaxaca, and Tabasco. The violin it's played in a small mountain area called Los Tuxtlas. So we can go into the other sub-regions, so micro-regions as well. Because also the tambourine used to be played in another region that is not the whole Sotavento, but I don't have time to go in each one. Also, the güiro. The güiro is also another instrument that people play. It became more popular recently. When I started in the 90s, I didn't see the güiro, but someone said, "Hey, we used to play the güiro." Okay, bring it back. And I'm not surprised. I don't know since when, but probably when Cubans went to to the south of Veracruz and start working on the tobacco plantations. That probably was a good time for the widow to get introduced. And then the marimbol, which is down there, you see two hands, someone sitting on top of a box, and that one's another African instrument. No, the root is in Africa. Marimbol, marimba, it sounds familiar. So this one has a bunch of keys, but you can find them with 3 keys. You can find it also in Cuba, for example, and the islands in the Caribbean a lot. Also, Colombia, the countries that have borders in the Caribbean Sea. And well, I can't perform with all those instruments, but they also are part of the Son Jarocho. And then, just to finish this presentation today, I wanted to show you the two. Still, both are very stylized. How do you call the clothing? Oh, well, attires that you'll see. The one in the left with white apparently is a design made for stage situations, stage performances, but inspired on a lot of the techniques that people know until today. You still find people who can do it by hand on their clothing, from the male guayabera to all the accessories and the dresses. And then the paliacate that you see on both is something that well, if you see the pattern, yeah, I think it comes from India. I don't know, the pattern is definitely a very ancient pattern that comes from far away, and you can track a bunch of elements in our traditional clothing. The white apparently here is because people used to wear manta, a type of clothing material. So yes, we can also dig into what are they wearing, the flowers and things in their head, and all the tocados and all the accessories in the head. And the women, they have a bunch of gold and peinetas, just like the Spanish. If you see someone a flamenco dancer, you can probably take some of the accessories from here and put them in a flamenco dancer, and vice versa. For us, we just wear a hat. A hat has many uses, but let's say one of them is making you look handsome. And then in the other side, you'll see a representation, on stage representation of the Fandango, the countryside style of Son Jarocho. The one in white is more urban, is more performative. The other one's supposed to be the down to grassroots, if you will. So I don't know if you have questions there. Here, I think we got a bunch of information. Here you see a bigger tarima. This one. On the Fandango, we don't wear uniforms. Like, probably the same style of clothing, if you will. But no, we saw the video of 2 weeks ago, and you'll see that some people might be wearing some of these clothing and accessories, but no, it's a night to celebrate. So you won't you won't you won't get anything but a comfortable, nice looking outfit to wear.
Thank you, Cesar. Thank you for this excellent presentation. Extremely informative and interesting. I think it provides a lot of elements, a lot of background to for now, for all of us to invite our audience to ask questions. I saw actually a question right here, and the questions are starting to come pretty quickly. The first one that I see here from Michelle, what does open strings mean?
Oh, it means that when you play the key that you're playing your instrument allows you to have notes that belong to the key, you know, of the song. Here I am the key of C. So I have with only one finger on my fret on my guitar, I can play a bunch of strings. If I wanted to play in D, that's it, I can't. That's it. Open strings don't work. So what I do when I play in D, I use a capo, boom, to press all the strings and still keep the open string technique. So it sounds like Son Jarocho.
Thank you, Cesar. Michelle was also asking, how is the tambourine impacted by weather? Because you mentioned that in your presentation that this very wet afternoon and evening that we are experiencing in LA affects these acoustic instruments, right?
Yes, all of them. Probably your doors might get a little swollen as well with the humidity because wood can absorb humidity. That's the reason, another reason why we varnish the instruments. But here, this skin is natural skin, so yeah, with this weather, it gets all flat. Plop, 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 plop. If I have an instrument that is with some plastic that I actually have down there, it wouldn't change.
Okay,
So
excellent.
so the answer would be humidity.
Yes, thank you, Cesar. So Sarah is asking, she writes, I love learning from you. Thank you, Cesar. What is your favorite song to play? Interesting question.
Ooh, it's hard. Yeah, it's super hard because I have a few songs that I like, but definitely. Okay, what can I say right now? El Cascabel is one of them. Also, La Bamba, of course, El Siquisiri. There's a reason why we call him the top 10.
Thank you. Vanessa, no question, just wanted to say thank you for this presentation. My mother and grandmother are from Veracruz, and I didn't know any of these. Very informative. That's exactly the goal, Vanessa. Thank you for being here. Camilo, I'm going to go straight to Camilo's question. Can you talk about the difference between son in the traditional sense and the difference between son that is performed and expanded via artistic expressions like bands, records, live
Okay.
shows?
Okay, I'm part of both. So I have a band as you heard at the beginning and I have some recordings. So what happens when you have a band and that specific target, then you might sing the same verses or your songs might have an arrangement and then you want to perform them as you record them because you put a lot of time doing those things. And yes, that's what happens. And at some point, people were recording in history, let's say in the 40s, 50s, 60s, people were recording Son Jarocho based on other versions that existed. And they were repeating the verses even from recording from another band. So that became more like a song. What are the lyrics of Son Jarocho? Son Jarocho doesn't have a specific lyrics. It has a theme, and then as much as your versada, how many verses you can know thousands of verses or make them, no improvise them. So that would be the biggest difference. And Son Jarocho in Fandango, you can be dancing and playing, singing a Son Jarocho for 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours sometimes, depending on the celebration, which is to my taste is too much. But I think a good 45 minutes it would be great. Half an hour enough. So that's how I would say is the difference.
Thank you, Cesar. Yvonne Arevalo is asking, how many years of practice did it take to learn all the instruments you have and learn all the different songs? Many years, right?
Yes, I cannot tell you a number, but it takes years. And when you start being young, you have all the time, and your brain is and your body is responding at a speed that is impressive. So yes, that's when I started learning also how to play violin. I play a little bit of harp. I went to school, start learning the cello, violoncello, the cello, and yes, you're just very curious and capable to do things. But yes, it was years, years.
Vladimir Mendoza is asking, César, ¿las jaranas han tenido transformaciones morfológicas a lo largo del tiempo?
Mm, very little. Not, I mean, what I've noticed in the last 30 something years is now luthiers, they have very good technique. They have access to tools that allow you to build instruments with a lot of precision in areas that you don't imagine. For example, the little groove where the strings are resting here in this piece. That's actually a piece of bone. The groove where the strings rest. Now some luthiers like this one, if they say, okay, the gauge of this string is gonna be 35 whatever, then they use the saw uh, with a thickness of 35. So the next string is gonna be 20, then they use the saw, the file, to file the groove in the perfect gauge. So it's incredible for me to see those changes. But then other than that, nope, still tuning pegs, head, neck, hollow body. Some people make them with different techniques. No, it still is the same morphology. You know, you get a hollow wooden box, but some people make them in different pieces, 2 pieces, or sometimes like guitars, laminated with 6 pieces. But still, they look like this. Requintos, on the other hand, in the 90s, Gilberto Gutierrez, what he did to his brother, because he used to like a lot of rock and blues. So very talented, Ramon Gutierrez. So Gilberto Gutierrez, what he did is after the 12th fret, he did a cutoff that we see in electric guitars. But having it in requintos is it's an improvement, and also having it in 5 strings. Adding another string is pretty recent. Yeah. Older.
Yo tengo una pregunta, César.
Sí.
Tú has enseñado en diferentes espacios, en diferentes audiencias, desde cárceles a maestros en la comunidad, en los salones de clase. En tu opinión, en tu experiencia, si nos podrías compartir brevemente, ¿cuál es la importancia, la influencia que tú has visto con los alumnos, especialmente con los niños, llevando este tipo de conocimiento de música, de instrumentos a las clases?
Oh, wow. ¿En español?
Como tú te sientas más cómodo.
Pues va en español. Lo que he podido ver es que a través del son jarocho, los sones pueden ser muy sencillos también, entonces son amigables. Entonces no tienes que pasar mucho tiempo con una técnica eh, para activar 10 dedos sobre un piano o un arco en un instrumento eh, como el violín o el cello, sino estos son muy sencillos sus acordes al inicio y los ritmos son juguetones. Y como se hacen en grupos, entonces eso le va dando una confianza a la gente para relacionarse con la música al mismo tiempo que se están relacionando con la poesía, con movimientos psicomotrices complejos, como puede ser el ponerlos a bailar y a cantar, el trabajar en grupo. Por ejemplo, en la prisión era muy importante generar estos grupos eh, grupos, vamos a decir, porque no son necesariamente amigos, pero ya ven que en los patios ahí no se llevan los de una raza con otra. Entonces, a través de la música y practicando la música en el espíritu del fandango, pues generaba estos espacios en donde coincidían, se expresaban y empezaban a descubrir que, bueno, no eran tan diferentes, que venían de culturas oprimidas y manifestaciones similares a la hora de celebrar. Y bueno, se rompían las fronteras y acabábamos teniendo un espacio muy positivo a manera social, grupal ahí en una cárcel. Y así trabajé en South LA, en una zona donde había gente con pocos recursos, bajos recursos y mucha violencia. Y también en esos lugares, pues era para esos jóvenes de high school, siendo que el son jarocho te permite echarle como punk. Entonces, échenle muchachos, aquí es donde, ¿no? O sea, ya no peleen allá afuera. Y empezaban a despertar al mismo tiempo un orgullo en su identidad, en su raíz mexicana. Y quien no fuera mexicano todavía sentía un tanto de conexión con esta música, porque pues América Latina no es muy diferente si nos vamos a lo cultural. Así que son muchos los aspectos y eso me ha permitido no solamente tener que ser el músico de escenario, sino también he podido ser este músico que usa las herramientas del son jarocho para justo motivar esos aspectos que señalé en los salones de clases, en los espacios de aprendizaje.
Qué bonito, muchas gracias, César. Y siguen llegando aquí los comentarios, muchas palabras de agradecimiento por tu presentación
Gracias.
hoy. Los maestros y la audiencia está muy contenta y nos dicen aquí que voy a leer alguno, ya dice que estamos ya justo en la hora, pero nada más para resaltar. Dice, I learned a lot from and made my day with your enthusiasm. Thank you, César.
Ah,
Y yo pienso así como ella, muchos de nosotros que estamos aquí es la primera vez que tenemos acceso a este tipo de contenido y te queremos dar las gracias por excelente trabajo.